Obviously, the one question is, everybody's asked me, why? I understand why Casey, why the boys, why your daughter.
Michael Wayne Jones was born on May 1, 1981, in the small town of Brattleboro, situated in Vermont, USA. While the identities of his parents remain unknown, it is evident that his family life was fraught with complexity and difficulty. From a tender age, Michael was a witness to the repeated physical and mental abuse between his parents, and he too was a victim of this mistreatment. These issues seem to be a tragic and enduring legacy, affecting both sides of his family. During Michael's early years, his father was incarcerated for reasons that are still unclear. This event deeply affected Michael, creating a profound sense of emptiness in his life. Seeking a fresh start, his mother remarried and had another son named Dana. Michael found some joy in having a sibling, but their home life remained far from ideal. His stepfather's inability to maintain steady employment placed the entire financial burden on his mother, who was forced to take on 2 jobs. Compounding their difficulties, Michael's stepfather exhibited aggressive behavior toward both him and Dana. The use of violent disciplinary methods created an environment of fear and oppression. If Michael arrived late to school or made a mistake, he was harshly punished, often locked in a shed and subjected to sexual abuse. Despite the harshness of his life, Michael showed a generous and protective nature. In such dire circumstances, he often took on the role of protecting Dana, sometimes enduring punishments meant for his brother to spare him the pain. This courageous and loving behavior forged a strong bond between the brothers, with Michael becoming a figure of admiration for Dana. The stepfather's control was so stringent that Michael was rarely allowed to interact with other children from school or the neighborhood. His mother, living in fear of her husband, was unable to confront or oppose him. This created an atmosphere of isolation, secrecy, and oppression within the household. Without any external support, Michael and Dana had to endure the ongoing abuse. The bleak atmosphere of their home did not go unnoticed by the neighbors, who began to suspect the presence of abuse. On one occasion, driven by desperation, Michael ran away from home. But Michael had no clear destination, so he was eventually found by the authorities. When questioned about his reasons for leaving, he shared the difficult story of his family life. However, he received no assistance regarding his situation. Despite his efforts to appear fine to those around him, Michael's true feelings were hidden beneath the surface. As he entered adolescence, his low self-esteem significantly affected him, leading to a depression that required medical treatment. The only respite from his pain was his high school. There, despite his introversion and loneliness, Michael felt somewhat at ease as responsibilities helped him forget his oppressive home life. He was fortunate to meet Dorothy, who owned a nearby business. She introduced him to her daughter, whose name remains unknown. Michael formed a friendship with the girl, which eventually turned into an on-and-off relationship. This special connection allowed Michael to reveal a kind, affectionate, and protective side of himself. Dorothy was delighted by this new facet of Michael, but was also concerned. He always seemed on edge when it was time to go home. Although Dorothy's daughter often visited him, Michael did everything he could to keep her away from his house. With so many signs, Dorothy finally decided to delve deeper in her conversations with Michael. He then confided in her about his constant worry for his mother and brother's well-being. This allowed her to glimpse the emotional burden and anguish he carried. Their friendship provided Michael with a temporary respite from his difficulties, a space where he could express his feelings. After high school, Michael made a life-changing decision by joining the United States Navy. This marked the beginning of a new chapter, providing him with a clear purpose within a highly structured environment. As he developed a deep love and attachment for the Navy, Michael realized how right his choice had been. This sense of well-being was largely due to the new friendships he formed with his fellow servicemen. Despite occasionally drinking, he always showed up for work and proved to be a calm and relaxed individual. At the time, Michael was dating a fellow service member, whose name has been kept confidential. However, it became clear that the relationship was imbalanced, as she was physically abusive. This revived old shadows of his family environment. When his relapse into depression became evident, he decided to leave her. He then focused on excelling in his career, which included undergoing additional training to provide medical care in combat situations. This earned him an assignment with the Marines in a medical role. During this period, Michael met a young woman named Sarah. They fell in love and eventually got married. Following their marriage, Michael left the Marines to focus on his new role as a husband. Sarah played a crucial role in Michael's life, helping to keep him on the right path. Together, they welcomed 3 children, and Michael dedicated himself to being a good father, always striving to provide them with the best upbringing possible. Although Sarah took the lead in many decisions, Michael consistently supported her choices. Around 2011, Sarah found a job in Central Florida, specifically in Orange County, and the family relocated there. She worked at Mount Dora Animal Hospital, managed by Beau Delaporte. As weeks went by and Michael struggled to find a job, Sarah persuaded Beau to hire him, recognizing his work experience. Michael quickly adapted to his new responsibilities and demonstrated remarkable dedication. He always exuded joy, and it was evident to everyone that he loved his work, caring for animals and attending to their owners. His positive attitude made him highly sought after, with pet owners preferring his services. His employers grew very fond of him, especially Beau, who, beyond their professional relationship, extended his friendship and trust to Michael. Beau even began to delegate some management responsibilities of the animal hospital to him. Everything was going smoothly, and in 2014, Beau hired a new veterinary technician, Casey. Born on December 23, 1986, in the city of Ossian, Indiana, Casey was the second daughter of Nickley and David. Her siblings were Sarah and Brandy. From a young age, Casey was undoubtedly the heart of her home, her overflowing energy lifting everyone's spirits, even beyond her family. As she grew, Casey showed great love for others, driven by a special connection to her spirituality. No matter the challenges, her strength lay in her faith and personal values. During her time at high school, Casey met Richard. Initially, their attraction was mutual. However, after dating for a few weeks, Richard began to notice certain behaviors in her. Despite her kind side, Casey also exhibited jealousy and possessiveness. Her insecurity led to an abusive side, expressed through words and actions. Nonetheless, Richard persisted, and with patience and calm, they married after completing their studies. Over time, Casey's mother decided to move to Florida, and shortly after, Sarah and Brandy followed her. Given Casey's close relationship with her family, she and Richard also relocated to the same state in 2009. As they settled in, Casey found occasional jobs as a transporter and sometimes worked as a dog groomer while learning the trade of a veterinary technician. During this period, the couple welcomed their first child, Cameron, and their happiness was evident. Cassie showed immense maternal devotion, making Cameron's well-being her top priority. A few years later, their joy grew even more with the birth of their second child, Preston. The children thrived in an ideal environment, filled with laughter and the loving care of their parents. As Casey advanced in her veterinary technician career, she found a job at an animal clinic where she met Michael, who had become Beau's right-hand man. From the beginning, Michael and Casey got along exceptionally well, but Beau and his wife sensed that their apparent friendship hinted at something more. This attraction, despite being inappropriate given the circumstances, was undeniable for Michael, even at the risk of being discovered by Sarah. The inappropriate attraction affected Michael's focus at work, leading to a decline in his performance, although he was always eager to meet Casey's needs and requests. She reciprocated his attention, and it wasn't long before they embarked on an affair. Eventually, both decided to divorce their respective spouses. Sarah gained custody of their 3 children and moved to Jacksonville, while Casey and Richard agreed on shared custody with fixed schedules that Casey strictly adhered to. She took responsibility for transporting Cameron and Preston, diligently fulfilling her parental duties. Meanwhile, Beau grew increasingly frustrated with Michael's declining performance. Additionally, Michael made inappropriate advances toward other clinic employees. When Michael requested leave to travel to his hometown, claiming his mother's death, Beau later discovered it was a ruse for a beach vacation. This betrayal led Beau to terminate Michael's employment. In retaliation, Michael broke into the clinic, stealing money, computer equipment, and even a weapon. Beau identified Michael as the culprit and reported him to the police. With Casey's help, Michael fled to New Mexico but was eventually captured and brought to justice. However, after a brief stint in prison, he was released. Despite everything, Casey's trust in Michael remained unshaken. They soon moved in together, and Michael took on the role of stepfather to Cameron and Preston. By 2017, around Halloween, Michael and Casey finally tied the knot and moved into a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom trailer. Despite the limited space, the modest rent made them feel fortunate to have each other. That same year, they welcomed their first daughter, Mercali, followed by Ayana the next year. While Michael worked as a construction laborer to support their 4 children, Casey took pride in her role as a homemaker. She cherished every stage of her children's growth and sought ways to preserve those unique moments. This led her to create a YouTube channel to share special milestones of their family. On the surface, their life seemed idyllic, with Michael exuding calmness and Casey's laughter often heard in the background of their videos. However, behind closed doors, the couple frequently clashed, and their arguments had become a constant issue. Distrustful of Michael, Casey made a habit of checking his phone. She also grew suspicious whenever he worked long hours. On the night of July 10, 2019, while the children slept, a heated argument erupted between them. The trigger was Casey's discovery of a supposed infidelity on Michael's phone. The confrontation quickly escalated from verbal to physical. In a fit of rage, Casey grabbed a baseball bat and shoved Michael with it. Overcome with anger, Michael managed to wrest the bat from her and in a blind fury struck her repeatedly, ultimately killing her. Michael then placed Casey's body in a plastic bag and stored it in a closet. He attempted to clean up the scene as best as he could. The next morning, he decided to take further steps to avoid the children discovering what had happened. He loaded her remains into his car. In the following days, to avoid suspicion, Michael continued to share content on Casey's social media accounts. On July 26th, pretending to be Casey, he texted Richard asking him to take care of Preston and Cameron. He did the same with Casey's mother, instructing her to look after Mercali and Ayana. When Richard came to pick up Cameron and Preston, He found Casey's absence strange and voiced his concerns to Michael, who brushed it off, saying she had left town for a few days. Casey's mother had a similar reaction when she came for Mercalli and Ayanna. That same day, Michael called Sarah, telling her that he was separating from Casey and needed to see his children while she worked. Later, he picked them up and took them to his residence. During the drive, the children noticed a foul odor in the car, similar to rotting meat. For 2 weeks, Michael continued to drive between his home and Sarah's residence to visit his children, all while Casey's lifeless body remained in the car. As days passed without any word from her daughter, Casey's mother began to sense that something was wrong. On August 10th, Richard returned Cameron and Preston to Michael, and this time, Casey's absence caused him much greater concern. During their brief conversation, Michael apologized for being the cause of their divorce and acknowledged the challenges Richard had faced during his time with Casey. As the new school year approached, Michael realized that the absence of the children and Casey would raise questions from the elementary school staff. One night, on an unspecified date, he dragged Cameron out of bed and suffocated him, then placed his body in a suitcase. The next morning, he did the same with Preston, this time putting the body in a garbage bag. A few days later, the trailer park owner served Michael an eviction notice, giving him a maximum of 2 weeks to leave. Amid this grim situation, Michael went to pick up Mercalli and Ayanna. When Casey's mother saw him again, still without Casey, she had a nervous breakdown. Her mind was fixated on one question: where was her daughter? As Michael drove with the girls, he was suddenly overwhelmed with guilt. He felt he had no choice but to turn himself in at a police station. However, after lingering at the entrance for a while, he changed his mind and drove back home. Once there, he filled the bathtub with water and drowned Mercalli and Ayanna. After they stopped breathing, he placed their bodies in a plastic container. By early September, the approach of Hurricane Orion led to a state of emergency being declared in Florida. Many sought refuge in public shelters to protect themselves from the impending disaster. This situation provided Michael an opportunity to flee with the 5 bodies. He loaded them into his truck and drove north, planning to stay with Sarah and his children. Despite the ongoing emergency in Florida, Sarah never saw Michael call his wife or inquire about the children. This made her uneasy, but aware of the marital issues, she chose not to ask questions. After the hurricane passed, Michael's neighbors reported a foul smell coming from the trailer to the property owner. Assuming the Jones family had already left, the owner first peeked through the windows and then entered the trailer. Aside from the furniture and personal belongings, nothing seemed amiss, but the stench was unbearable. By this time, Casey's, desperate to find an explanation for her daughter's absence, speculated that Michael might be in trouble with the law again and was hiding. She concluded that her daughter might be in hiding for safety reasons, but instead of staying idle, she contacted the sheriff's office to request a welfare check on Casey. When the officers conducted the welfare check, they found the house empty and seemingly recently cleaned. However, the presence of cleaning supplies near the door contrasted with the persistent smell of decomposition. Despite this, the property owner arrived and asked the officers to leave. Meanwhile, with the body still in his vehicle, Michael left Sarah's house and drove across the state border into Georgia. There, near a wooded area, he disposed of Cameron, Preston, Mercalli, and Ayanna. While driving on the highway and checking his GPS, Michael lost control of his vehicle and crashed. Surprisingly, he emerged unscathed, but the vehicle was completely wrecked. Police officers quickly arrived at the scene and immediately noticed the terrible odor coming from the truck. When they opened the suitcase, they were met with a horrifying sight: Casey's remains. There, on the roadside and under the shocked gaze of the authorities, Michael confessed in detail to his gruesome actions, including the location of the children. Consequently, he was taken into custody. Upon hearing the news, Casey's family felt as though their world had collapsed. In a state of shock, they could not stop asking themselves how a human being could inflict so much harm on others, especially on babies. For the first time in her life, Sarah experienced hatred towards someone, as she later stated. However, the thought that Casey might have witnessed her children's deaths caused her the most pain. Based on the findings and armed with a search warrant, the agents returned to Casey's residence. Upon entering, besides the smell, they noticed a reddish stain on the carpet. They prepared to collect evidence at the scene. Meanwhile, the autopsies were being performed. According to the forensic report, Cameron had a fractured jaw but no other visible signs of trauma. However, a towel was found in his mouth. Preston had a noose around his neck. Mercalli and Ayanna were found together in a small plastic bag containing a baby bottle labeled Ayanna and a pair of pink sandals. Both had died by drowning. As for Casey, there was crushing on the front of her skull and face, indicating a blow with a blunt object, but no other traumas were found on her body. Michael agreed to be interviewed by the officers, and during the process he remained calm and precise in his responses, making no attempt to deceive the agents. On the contrary, Michael thanked the officers for capturing him, stating that there was nothing more he could do given the circumstances. Calmly, he then recounted the events chronologically, from the night of the fight with Casey to his subsequent arrest. When asked about the motive behind his actions, Michael responded that everything had accumulated in his life to the point where it seemed like the best and only way out. Beyond the logical impact of such a tragedy on everyone involved, it was particularly hard and cruel for Sarah to accept that her own children had been exposed to and lived with a man like Michael. Understandably, after learning the facts, Sarah suffered from mental health issues. Michael was charged with second-degree murder for Casey's death and 4 additional counts of first-degree premeditated murder for the deaths of the children. He pleaded guilty. This plea avoided a trial, moving the case directly to the sentencing phase. In this phase, a jury of 12 people had to decide between life imprisonment or the death penalty. As part of their strategy, the defense focused on Michael's difficult childhood and his mental health issues, presenting various psychological disorders as mitigating factors. However, the state prosecutors argued that the undeniable brutality of the case warranted the death penalty. In January 2023, the jury unanimously recommended the death penalty in accordance with state law. During a brief 9-minute hearing, the judge sentenced Michael for his crimes. Additionally, he was given life without parole for Casey's murder. Michael's lawyer immediately filed the necessary paperwork to appeal the sentence. Despite this last effort on Friday, April 28, 2023, the judge upheld the previous sentence. Prosecutors expressed their satisfaction with the justice served for the victims' families. As he awaits execution, Michael remains behind bars. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. Today, we'll dive into the story of Vincent Gillis, a boy with bright blue eyes who transformed into something monstrous. But what goes on in the mind of a psychopath? Scientists have been trying to crack this mystery for years. Research suggests that psychopaths aren't necessarily more intelligent or misguided geniuses. They're average in terms of cognitive ability, but their emotional and reward systems don't function properly. This means they find pleasure and passion in actions that most people find appalling. Studies have also shown that psychopaths tend to have lower brain activity in emotional situations, like when experiencing fear or seeing someone else threatened. Essentially, they barely react when someone else is in danger. Two major factors play a crucial role in turning someone into a killer: their biological traits and their cultural environment. This includes their upbringing and social relationships. Despite these insights, it's important to note that not all psychopaths commit crimes or become murderers. Psychopaths generally believe they are above the law and are fully aware of their actions. They aren't victims of an illness. Sean Vincent Gillis appeared quite normal on the outside. Despite some early signs of violence, no one could have predicted what he was capable of as an adult. He turned into a whirlwind of crime and violence that lasted over a decade. Sean was born on June 24, 1962, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, USA. His parents are Yvonne and Norman Gillis. His father struggled with alcoholism and mental health issues. Around the time of Sean's birth, a disturbing incident occurred that impacted the family deeply. Norman pointed a gun at the baby's head. After this, he decided to leave the family, fearing he might harm his son and wife. Norman drifted in and out of various mental health institutions and lost contact with his family. Sean was raised in southern Louisiana by his mother, with the support of his paternal grandparents. His mother worked full-time at a local TV station and often called Sean her little blue-eyed angel. According to Yvonne, Sean was a quiet, well-behaved child with average grades who enjoyed playing with model cars and got along well with other kids. When Sean was 10, he and his mother moved to another local neighborhood. Some neighbors thought Sean was a bit rough with other children. They lived in a small ranch-style house in a quiet, middle-class neighborhood. Sean attended Catholic schools, where he met one of his best friends, John Green. John found Sean to be very intelligent, respectful towards adults, and humorous. In 8th grade, another boy, John Rosas, joined their close-knit group. They hung out together, going to the movies, the mall, or each other's houses. As they grew older, they got into some minor trouble, including a phase where they dabbled in Satanism. They encountered people involved in such rituals and enjoyed the thrill of being scared. They also smoked marijuana together, which Sean seemed to enjoy more than the others. During his teens, Sean's more violent side began to emerge, with episodes of uncontrollable anger recurring repeatedly. Once, a neighbor, Caroline, heard loud banging at 3 in the morning. Looking outside, she saw Sean mercilessly beating some trash cans in her yard. He also expressed frustration to another neighbor about not having a girlfriend. Caroline described him as an angry young man prone to fits of rage, a side of Sean his mother never saw. At 17, Sean faced the death of his paternal grandfather, which led him to see his father for the first time since being abandoned as a baby. This reunion began the development of a relationship between father and son. Around this age, Sean also started his criminal record with minor infractions. Over the years, he was arrested for traffic violations, driving under the influence, possession of marijuana, and contempt of court. At 18, Sean discovered photos owned by his father that depicted men in various sexual positions, revealing his father's homosexuality, a fact that Sean found difficult to accept. By then, Norman had joined Alcoholics Anonymous to address his addiction. After high school, Sean attended various community technical institutes and juggled low-paying jobs while still living with his mother. One of his main jobs was at a convenience store chain. He eventually graduated from a community school with a degree in computer science. When Sean turned 30, his mother moved to Atlanta for a job offer. Refusing to move with her, Sean stayed behind, living alone for the first time in his mother's house. He soon felt lonely and became so obsessed with pornography that he began neglecting his jobs. His mother continued to send him money to help with financial difficulties. However, he was very angry with her for moving away and would sometimes scream in anger. Neighbors reported that he often lay on the grass at night, shouting loudly at the moon, including obscenities directed at his mother. In 1992, he was caught peeping through a neighbor's window as his obsession with pornography grew. In 1994, he met Terry, a girl who worked in a store, and they began dating. Her best friend introduced them, highlighting their shared interests in science fiction, the TV series Star Trek, and collecting memorabilia. To her, Sean was like a teddy bear, someone you'd bring home to meet your mother. While Terry didn't find Sean extraordinary, she valued his kindness and thoughtfulness. The only downside for her was his fondness for drinking. After their first date, a peculiar incident occurred. During an argument, Terry slapped him and Sean started crying. She immediately reassured him that it wouldn't happen again. After overcoming this incident, they established a stable relationship and moved in together into Sean's house a year later. Terry mentioned that Sean didn't believe in sex. He once told her that he had been taught it was something unpleasant and to be avoided. The same year he met his girlfriend, Sean began a crime spree that lasted nearly a decade. This softly spoken, seemingly intelligent man claimed he started killing due to stress. On March 21, 1994, he committed his first murder. He entered the St. James Place, a prestigious retirement home in Baton Rouge located across from where he worked. Around 3 in the morning, he managed to get inside when a nurse left the door unlocked. His victim was Ann Bryan, an 82-year-old woman. He attempted to assault her but froze when she screamed as he touched her. Losing control, he silenced her by stabbing and slashing her with a household knife he always carried. The ferocity of the stabs was such that he nearly decapitated the elderly woman. This crime shocked the Baton Rouge community. Meanwhile, Sean's obsession with pornography led him to websites displaying abuse and mutilation of women. He even once showed his girlfriend a picture of a deceased woman from one of these sites. She didn't pay much attention to it and continued their relationship, unaware of the depths of his depravity. Despite the brutality of his first murder, it took another 5 years before Sean killed again, and then the number of victims rapidly increased. He later confessed to a reporter that the pause was because he felt content during that time. On January 4, 1999, Catherine Ann Hall, a 29-year-old prostitute and drug addict living in a state housing project known for drug dealers and prostitution on North Street, became his second victim. She got into his car after he said he wanted her services. Once inside, he restrained her with a plastic zip tie. She tried to escape, but Sean grabbed and stabbed her. He struck her with the knife 16 times in total. After that, he removed her clothes and mutilated her body. Finally, he dumped her body in a secluded area. The next day, a squirrel hunter found her body lying face down on a rural road. For the police, it was a particularly macabre scene. She was positioned in a sort of ballet pose next to a dead-end street sign, a grim and sick joke indicating that the investigators were at a dead end. Months later, in May 1999, came the third victim. Sean began stalking a woman he had seen jogging in the southern metropolitan area of Baton Rouge. Her name was Hardy Schmidt, a 52-year-old married woman with 3 children, well known in her community. She loved running and had once participated in the Boston Marathon. For 3 weeks, Sean drove around the area looking for her. Around 5:30 a.m. on Sunday, May 30th, 1999, he finally saw her jogging along an avenue. Sean hit her with his white Chevy Cavalier as she jogged, knocking her into a ditch. He quickly got out of the car, forced her inside, placed a sturdy plastic zip tie around her neck, and drove to a park on Highland Road, where he assaulted her before killing her. He then put her body in the trunk of his car, where it stayed until 2 days later when he noticed a bad smell coming from the car, prompting him to dump her body in a swamp in a rural parish far from Baton Rouge. A cyclist eventually found her body. From then on, Sean committed seemingly unconnected murders, which prevented authorities from even realizing they were happening. He mercilessly murdered women by strangling them with a plastic zip tie after assaulting them. He would often cut them up, dismembering them, a dark and utterly evil practice. On November 12, 1999, he claimed his 4th victim, Joyce Williams, a 36-year-old prostitute. He took her to a sugarcane field beside the Mississippi River and strangled her with a plastic zip tie. Then he took her to his house to complete his gruesome ritual, and for the first time, he consumed the human flesh of a victim. After the murder, he left the body in the trunk of his car and went to pick up his girlfriend from work. Later that night, he dumped the body in a secluded area. It was not found until a month later. His next victim was Lillian Robinson, another 52-year-old prostitute whom he attacked in January 2000. He repeated his usual method and took her to his house, but he did not have time to finish because his girlfriend would soon be home from work. However, he did commit necrophilia. He then abandoned her body in the largest swamp in the United States, located in central southern Louisiana. In March, almost 2 months later, the corpse was discovered by some fishermen. In October, 38-year-old prostitute Marilyn Nevels became his next victim. He killed her in the same way as the others, and after bringing the body to his house, he showered with it before leaving it on top of a levee, unhidden about 3 miles from his home near the Mississippi River. The decomposing body was found on October 31st by a man walking in the woods. Sean did not kill again until October 2003, 3 years later, when he took the life of 45-year-old Johnny Mae Williams. He picked up a divorced mother of 3 who was also a prostitute and drug addict. Sean knew her well as she had cleaned his house several times over about 10 years. He took her to a remote area where he beat, abused, and strangled her, then mutilated her body with a knife. He took her hands as a souvenir. He left the body exposed on top of an embankment after positioning it in various poses to take photographs. When it was found, the body was so mutilated that East Baton Rouge's police commented that it was barely recognizable as a human being. Her legs had numerous cuts on the front and back. Despite finding the bodies of his victims, no weapons, witnesses, or current fingerprints were ever found. The police had no leads that could direct them to the killer, which left Sean free to continue his dark deeds. 2 serial criminals were operating in the area. In 2003, after nearly 11 years since his first crime, Sean's luck began to change. On May 27, 2003, Derek Todd Lee, another serial killer active in the Baton Rouge metropolitan area who had taken the lives of 7 women since 1992, was arrested. Sean admired this criminal, even keeping newspaper clippings about his crimes, aspiring to surpass him. With Lee's capture, the police started paying closer attention to unresolved cases involving women. When some of these crimes could not be linked to Derek, investigators began to suspect that another serial killer might have been operating simultaneously. Then, in February 2004, Sean committed what would be his 8th and final murder. He killed 43-year-old Donna Bennett Johnston, who had become a prostitute due to her drug addiction. She was heavily intoxicated, making it easy for him to lure her into his car. He took her to a secluded spot near his house. Unable to defend herself, Donna was abused and then strangled with a plastic wrap, like his previous victims. According to Sean, she became unconscious within seconds and then died. Her last words were, "I can't breathe." After killing her, he placed the body on the grass, removed all her clothes, and mutilated her body horrifically, committing cannibalism and cutting out a butterfly tattoo she had. Donna's body was discovered on February 27, 2004, in a canal south of Louisiana State University. It was, for many, Sean's most gruesome and sordid murder. Crucially, Donna had fought against her attacker, as evidenced by the DNA found under the nails of her right hand. Unfortunately, there was no match in the police records, but it was the same DNA found on 2 other bodies previously discovered, those of Catherine Ann Hall and Johnny May Williams. However, a tire print found near Donna's body proved to be Sean's undoing, and a stroke of luck for the investigators, who had until then had little to go on in the case. The police established a special task force to thoroughly investigate the deaths of Donna, Johnny, and Catherine, along with other similar unsolved murders. Highly specialized experts were dedicated to this effort. Detectives took photos and made casts of the Goodyear tire tracks, which were fortunately quite distinct. These tracks were linked to a unique set of tires, and Louisiana's State Crime Lab was able to determine their make, model, and type. They further narrowed down the possibilities when they discovered that this particular tire was only manufactured over a 3-year period that ended in 2003. Only 200 of these tires were sold in the Baton Rouge metropolitan area. Local authorities collaborated with Goodyear stores to track down those who had purchased this particular type of tire in the area. Investigators then conducted DNA tests on these individuals, including Sean. The aim was to compare their DNA samples with the evidence found on one of the victims' bodies. On April 28, 2004, it was Sean's turn to provide his DNA sample for the test. He was the 26th person on the list of buyers. A police agent questioned him at his home to request the sample, which Sean provided without any issue. However, his responses raised suspicions. He mentioned knowing Johnny because she had cleaned his house several times. He also explained that his vehicle's tire tracks were found near where Donna's body was discovered because he had stopped there to urinate. Lastly, he made a bizarre comment about finding blood in his car, claiming it was from a time when Johnny had a heavy menstrual period while he was driving her somewhere. The detective was convinced he was dealing with the right man but had to let him go that night while waiting for the DNA test results. Eventually, the test confirmed the detective's suspicions. He was indeed the murderer. The following day, April 29, 2004, a special task force returned to the house and arrested Sean for murder. As he was being handcuffed, he looked at Terry and simply said, "I'm sorry." One of the officers approached Terry and asked if she knew she had been living with a serial killer. Her world collapsed that night. Sean had been her partner for 9 years. It was unbelievable what was happening. Later that same day, Sean confessed to his crimes while the police executed a search warrant at his house, leading to astonishing discoveries. Detectives found 45 digital photographs on his computer that showed the mutilated body of Donna, as well as the corpse in the trunk of his car. They also uncovered photos of other victims. The authorities seized 8 saws, including one for cutting metal, several knives, a machete, plastic zip ties, a 14-inch bayonet, a wooden bludgeon, 6 pocket-sized Playboy magazines, and newspaper clippings about Derek Lee's last victim. One of his computers also contained files on murders and necrophilia. Additionally, several books on both fiction and nonfiction about serial killers were confiscated. Sean confessed to his murders with a mix of pride and sadness for what he had done. He expressed regret for deceiving people, but admitted he would do it again, and that if released, he would find someone before nightfall.
I'm sorry I hurt people. But I would do it again.
In May 2004, FBI agents interviewed Sean. His darkest side emerged. During the conversation, he told the officials that he was playing a chess game with them as they investigated each of the crime scenes. He used TV news to strategize his next move and assess whether he was winning the game. He claimed he was the chess master then and they would never win. His main interest was whether they found the body, where, and in what condition. He then explained to the agents how he used a combination of charm and money to lure his victims into his vehicle. He recounted how the prostitutes loved him because he treated them with respect, like ladies, even though he had no specific plan or agenda on when or where he would kill his next victim. It all depended on when the opportunity presented itself. However, he always paid close attention to when and where to dispose of the bodies. One of the most striking aspects of this case was how Sean successfully hid his double life from his partner. He made sure to pick her up after work and she never suspected a thing. Once, she noticed a bad smell coming from the trunk of the car, and he told her it was a dead animal that had hit his car. He cleaned the vehicle immediately. Another time, Terry noticed the car's mileage increasing rapidly due to the trips John made to find his victims and then dispose of the bodies. However, she only suspected that he might be cheating on her with another woman. Terry had to hear it from John himself to believe what the police were saying. She asked him if he did it, and he admitted it and expressed his regret. Sean was charged with his crimes at different times as investigators worked to find evidence that would support his confession to the murders. For example, the police had no idea about the crime committed against Marilyn Nevels. Marilyn had been missing for 4 years, a fact Sean confessed to. Her disappearance had never been reported. Meanwhile, the crime lab continued to search the house for traces of blood, bones, and tissues. This led them to realize that Sean had kept some parts of his dismembered victims' bodies in his house as souvenirs. The photographs helped him relive the murders. It was determined that he had consumed the flesh of his victims, committed necrophilia with the corpses, and even showered with one of the dead bodies and painted the nails of the hands he had mutilated. In the aftermath of Sean's arrest, a friend of Donna, his last victim for over a decade, sent a letter to the criminal. He responded with several letters in which he expressed some remorse for the murders he committed, especially for mutilating the bodies. He mentioned that he didn't talk much with Donna and that sex was not his intention. He described that night as one filled with pure evil, devoid of compassion, faith, mercy, or hope. He blamed his lack of faith and his long-standing hatred towards God. He admitted he didn't really understand what came over him and confessed that even 10 years earlier, he could never have imagined harming anyone. He described it as a mystery why he did those things to the corpse, and something deep in his subconscious told him he needed those macabre actions. He also stated that sometimes he committed the murders without knowing what he was doing. In another part of the letter, he expressed deep regret for killing those women. In the end, he showed repentance and stated he did not want to die, but that was up to the Almighty. He also declared his love for his family, now realizing he truly loved them, that God loved him, and he loved God. Donna's friend passed away in 2005 from complications related to AIDS, but before her death, she handed over Sean's letters to the prosecutors, which were used in the trials against him to demonstrate his culpability for the crimes. Initially, Sean was tried for the murder of Joyce Williams. During the trial, Sean's girlfriend testified that he confessed the crime to her because he needed to make things right with God. In 2007, after years of judicial delays, he was sentenced to life imprisonment for that crime. The following year, on July 21, 2008, in a unanimous verdict, he was found guilty of the murders of 3 more of his victims. This moved the trial into the sentencing phase. The defense brought a doctor to the stand who testified that Sean exhibited signs of schizoaffective disorder, arguing that he should not be considered mentally capable. Relatives of the victims also testified. Lauren Williams, the daughter of Johnny May Williams, confronted him from the stand and asked why he did it. He shrugged and simply said, "I'm sorry." But she did not believe in his repentance. On July 31st at 3:03 p.m., the jury began deliberations on what Sean's sentence should be. At 5:45 p.m., they returned to the courtroom without having reached an agreement on the prosecution's request for the death penalty. As a result, Sean was sentenced to life imprisonment with hard labor without the possibility of parole. Later, in 2013, he was found guilty of second-degree murder and received another life sentence for the deaths of Ann Bryan and Hardy Schmidt. He was incarcerated in the Louisiana State Penitentiary, where he remains to this day. No one knows for sure what stirred in Sean's subconscious, and it seems there may never be an answer. But one shocking revelation came when the district attorney questioned him, and he admitted he would have liked to have had relations with his mother. His mother's departure to another city, leaving him on his own, unleashed a rage that no one could have imagined, leading to the most horrifying murders. What's most disturbing is that despite growing up without his father, Sean was a love child and never showed signs of being capable of such atrocities. Over time, perhaps because he had evaded suspicion for so many years, he began to display the bodies of his victims openly, as if they were his sinister trophies. Moreover, he knew how to choose his victims, hunting for prostitutes, drug addicts, and anyone willing to get into his car, people who had no one to miss them, the outcasts of society. However, he also included at least 2 individuals from better economic backgrounds, which helped him avoid sticking too closely to a single pattern. His confidence in not being caught, thinking he was winning the chess game against the police, underscores the narcissistic, grandiose, and egomaniacal character of this serial killer. The interviews in which he revealed his crimes are chilling, as they showed a man speaking calmly about heinous acts, without a tremor in his voice. It seemed as if he wanted to shout it from the rooftops to let everyone know he was pure evil. And with that, we wrap up today's episode of Unreal True Crime. Don't forget to subscribe and hit like to let me know you appreciate my work. Until next time.